guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Welcome to the channel, guys. How are you doing? I'm doing pretty well. I just got home, traveled for 5 days for work, and it feels good to be home. It feels good to be in rainy New England right now. Hopefully you guys are doing well. It was weird to fly again. It's been a while since I've traveled, and feels nice to be back home. Did I mention that? I think I already did. Anyway, guys, we're almost at 100,000 subscribers, believe it or not, for my second channel, second time doing it, and it feels just as good to have a channel grow along with you guys. It's testament to you guys who tune in on a regular basis, so thank you so much here. About 10,000 to go. What's a few thousand subscribers amongst friends? Anyway, if you enjoyed the content, I invite you to subscribe as well. Join the I don't have any corny name for my for my viewers. Join the Ash Army.
No, don't like that.
So here we go, guys. Gonna start out today by going over all of the legendary champions added in 2021. There was a lot of them, and it can kind of be overwhelming if you're not up to date with every single time they release one of these champions. You can miss quite a few of them. So we're gonna go over all of them today and just trying to give you, an indicator of who's worth looking out for and who already needs a buff. The good news is vast majority of these champions are all really, really good, including Helior. Helior? Helior.
Helior.
So Helior, first of all, looks amazing, right? I mean, all these champions look totally badass. Look at the shield. So cool, so cool. Really, I love the aesthetics on this dude. Bannerlord champion, Force. He is the only new legendary Bannerlord champion added to the game this year. He attacks one enemy, increases the champion's defense by 5% if this attack is critical. Stacks up to 20%. Pretty cool on the A1, right? Will also heal this champion by 7.5% of their defense after attacking if their defense has already been increased to 20%. His damage is based on defense. Look at his high defense base as well, 1542. On the A2, attacks all enemies, plays a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns, equal to 20% of the damage inflicted. This is on a 3-turn cooldown. Then his A3 transfers all debuffs from all allies to a target enemy, then attacks the enemy with a default skill. Converts this champion's resistance into additional accuracy when using this skill. This is on a 3-turn cooldown, harsh light. This is really harsh. I love it.
Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah.
I love the transfer all debuffs. So that's like a cleanse built into an attack. And I love the resistance into additional accuracy because you'll notice the rest of his kit doesn't have any debuffs, right? We don't have any reason to stack accuracy on him other than this. So really cool that he has that transference in his kit as well. Whenever an ally that has 2 or more debuffs is attacked, this champion will absorb 30% of the incoming damage from the ally. And again, he's very kind of robustly built here at 1542 on the defense. Ally resists in all battles by 60 as well. This guy's really, really cool. Big fan of this dude. All right, next up is going to be no new high elves this year, by the way. Believe it or not, Pixneal was actually last year. She was a Christmas champion added to the game. Had to double check on her. Sacred Order. We have 1 new here, and boy, or actually 2 new here, and boy, are they both really good, right? So Cardiel is really high on my wish list. He's got great base stats here, great speed at 106. On his A1, he heals all allies by 7.5% of their max HP. All places is true. Fear debuff for 1 turn if the target is under these factions. I kind of like the addition of these kind of I don't know, conditional faction abilities on their kits. Do you guys like that? Do you dislike that? As long as it's added to an already really good kit, I like it. Removes debuffs from all allies, so a cleanse on a 3-turn, block debuffs, revive on death for 2 turns, and the revive on death debuff cannot be removed. Really good ability, kind of like Sky Touch Shaman's A2, only better. On the A3, increased crit rate, increased crit damage on all allies, and then an ally attack as well. Decrease the cooldown of the skill by 1 turn if the enemy is killed. Man, really sweet. It's on a 4-turn cooldown as opposed to kind of like Kreela, Witch Arms 3-turn cooldown, but it has the decrease the cooldown as well if the enemy is killed. And then has allies receive 20% less damage from those factions. Whenever an ally attacks, has a 15% chance to team up with them and join the attack. Really cool passive, and you guys can go ahead and read on as well. We're not gonna do a thorough guide on all these champions, but Cardiel, in my opinion, is one of the best support champions inside the game. I love ally attack champions, so I'm a little bit biased there. But speaking of really good champions, Astralon is very good. I am an idiot for skipping out on his fusion or fragment summon. Was it a fusion? Probably a fusion because I suck at fusions, as you guys know.
I'm saying all this out loud, and I probably shouldn't be.
Two-time hitter on his A1. This dude hits hard. He hits really hard. He's very good for the arena. He's very good in a lot of areas. Just a very good champion, right? He has some synergy as a companion champion to Countess Lix as well. On his A2, has ignore defense, strengthen, and ally protect, revives a random ally with 40% HP and a shield if it kills an enemy, and then places a shield on this champion equal to 20% of their max HP for 2 turns if the attack kills an enemy. And again, it hits hard. You guys know if you have him, he hits very hard. On his A3 as well, removes all buffs from the targets under Veil, Perfect Veil, and then replaces a weaken debuff on all enemies who have that Veil or Perfect Veil removed, and then attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance at placing a stun debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. It's a money ability, man. There's not that many champions out there in this game who have an unconditional stun. It's a great arena opening move. It hits hard. You stun the enemy team. Very, very good. Fills his champion's turn meter by 3% each time an ally is hit. Decreases incoming damage by 25% if the attacker's attack is lower than this champion's. And check out his base attack, 1619. One of the, one of the few champions in this game. I think there's only like a handful, maybe about a dozen or so, maybe less than that, with an attack that high with good multipliers. So he's really the full package, what we're looking for from an offense-based champion with control in his kit as well. Very, very good champion. So barbarians. Yakarl the Scourge. Yakarl the Scourge. The Scourge.
Scourge.
Trying my best.
Actually was released, he was right at the end of the year, right? So they announced him in 2020, but he was released in the game in 2021. He sucks. In my opinion. Listen, it's weird because he is a void legendary. When you compare him to, epics, yeah, you could take him over epics, right? But a void legendary, we want these champions to be very, very, very special. We want them to be very exceptionally good, and I think, champions like Whirlwind Frost King are way better than Yakarl the Scourge. Granted, he's an attack versus a support champion, so probably a bad comparison. I'm just trying to pick a void wintry themed champions. Anyway, this dude has a lot of freeze going on. I'm not going to go over his entire kit, but essentially he attacks 1 enemy, and he attacks 1 enemy 3 times. There's no AoE in his kit. He doesn't, I don't know. He's dealing a lot of single target damage. He has like this kind of interesting passive, decreases the damage this champion receives by 10% and increases the damage this champion inflicts by 10% if there are 1 or more enemies under freeze. And then if there are 2 or more enemies under freeze, we increase his speed and his resistance, which is kind of cool. Also an active effect every 5 turns though. Places an unkillable buff on this champion for 2 turns whenever there are 3 enemies under freeze debuffs. Unique, but not that great, right? Not that great. So that's Yakarl the Scourge. I really think he needs a buff personally. He's one of the few kind of, weak points on the new champions add to the game. There's a few. There's probably like 4 or 5 that I'm not a big fan of. Roxam is not an S-tier legendary champion, but he's good. He's a solid champion. He can put out some really serious damage as well. He has a really interesting kit. I actually got him really early. I was lucky, pulled him from a shard. I maxed him out. I only use him in Faction Wars, Lizardmen, but of course I have, a pretty developed account, pay to win. All right, so has a 60% chance of filling this champion's turn meter by 10%. Also has 60% chance of placing a perfect veil on this champion for 1 turn if the attack is critical, okay? On the A2, attacks 1 enemy, fills his champion's turn meter by 50% on 3-turn cooldown. That's really cool, right? We also have a 100% chance when both to placing a stun debuff when attacking while under veil or perfect veil. 100% chance of placing a sleep debuff when attacking without a veil or perfect veil. Places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns after attacking without a veil or perfect veil. Okay, so crazy, right? On the A3, 4-turn cooldown. It's an AoE attack while under veil or perfect veil, with a decreased defense and the weaken on a 4-turn. While not, it attacks 1 enemy with a decreased defense and the weaken, and then places the perfect veil after the fact. So he's better when paired with a champion who already has a veil, like Duchess or Rector Droth, and he's okay without it, right? Places block debuff, strengthen, on this champion for 1 turn, and it continues heal for 2 turns when they receive a Veil or Perfect Veil. You guys know I am a huge fan of both of these buffs, especially Strengthen. I think that Strengthen is the best defensive buff in the game. It mitigates 25% of damage. That's better than increased defense. All right, increase crit rate in Doom Tower battles by 23%. You know, not too bad, not too good. All right, so that is the only new Lizardmen. No Ogryn Tribe legendaries added. I'm petrified here of forgetting a champion, but it looks like none. It looks like we're in the clear here. So next up is going to be, here he is. Here he is. It's going to be Ramantu Drakesblood. He is the new champion that nobody in the game has at the time of this recording, but he looks absolutely sick, right? He's the new kind of complete all the missions, all the quests in the game. Missions or quests? Missions. After the Arbiter missions, we now got Ramantu. We now have Ramantu. So, Psychic Overload, man, you guys can go ahead and read this, but it's a very, very cool A1. We have a chance of placing a stun and increase the cooldown of 1 target skills. Okay, so I guess I will read it. I guess I will read it to you guys. If the cooldown increase is successful, we'll also decrease the cooldown of 1 random skill by 1 turn of the ally with the highest turn meter and skill on cooldown. That's really, really cool on the A1. That's not A1, guys. Attacks 1 enemy 4 times, and look at this. First hit, decrease defense. Second hit, weaken. Third hit, decrease speed. Fourth hit, block buffs. And then if he lands all 4 of those debuffs, he lands a True Fear as well. Wow. What an ability. It's 1 target, but it's a 4-time hitter. Pretty sick ability, right? Anybody close to getting this dude? By the way, I'm not. I'm slacking terribly, terribly. I pulled Arbiter semi-early, and then I just totally, I forgot about the missions. I didn't even do the missions because I had Arbiter already, right? And now that's coming back to bite me because I have to go back and do them all. Anyway, Blood Wings is A3 on a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of removing all buffs from all enemies before attacking. Dude, that's sick. And then has a 100% chance of placing block active skill debuff for 2 turns on enemies without passive skills. Has a 100% chance of placing a block passive skills debuff for 2 turns on enemies with passive skills. This ability is just insane. We've never seen anything like this Blood Wings ability. Very good. Whenever an enemy team places a stun, sleep, freeze, fear, true fear, or provoke any of the CC crowd control abilities, will instantly fill this champion's turn meter by 30% and place an increased speed and a shield on them for 2 turns. The shield equal to 30% of this champion's max HP. What a champion. Has accuracy in all battles by 80, aura, pretty fast, decent stats. That's the new mission reward champion, guys. All right, who's up next? No Skinwalkers. No new Skinwalkers. Skinwalkers, man. Give him a little love. The last guy was Coronar, right? Who's really good. I'm a big fan of Coronar. I think that he's grown on me quite a bit since I unlocked him. Anyway, Oryx, guys. Always find a way to try to add a random tidbit about anything non-related to this video, right? So we have 3 new champions. They're right next to, actually 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, all in a row. Let's talk about them. So Gomlock Skyhide looks to be really, really good. He's the 3rd Doom Tower hard secret room farmable champion. So no one has him at the time of this recording, but has a leech on his A1. Has, by the way, I should mention, a 75% chance of placing a leech debuff for 2 turns on 2 random enemies if this champion has full HP. Pretty cool. On his A2, this is a 2-turn cooldown. Keep that in mind, guys. Attacks 1 enemy. Has a 100% chance when booked of stealing 2 random buffs from the target. Also has a 100% chance when booked of decreasing the target's turn meter by 50%. Steals 50% of the target's max turn meter instead if this champion has full HP. Steals 50% of the target's max turn meter. So is that just a guarantee that we'll steal it? If the champion has full HP. So really cool when he's attacking with full HP, especially on his A1 and his A2. And this is on a 2-turn. That's a really good ability for a 2-turn cooldown. This is on a 4-turn cooldown, guys. Attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 100% chance when booked of placing a decreased defense debuff on all enemies for 2 turns. The first hit on each target also has a 100% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 10%. The second hit has a 100% chance of placing a weaken if he has full HP. Again, his passive is whenever 4 or more buffs are placed on the enemy team in a single turn, place a shield buff on this champion for equal to 15% of this champion's max HP for 2 turns. Okay, the passive is okay. It's better than nothing, right? But this A3, I really like his kit. I think he's a very interesting champion. King Garage. King Garbage is the pun.
This is what you do to haters. You just smile.
And this is a champion that a lot of people got very, very excited for. Let me just cut to the chase here, guys. He has a stun on the A1. He has a 4-time hitter on the A2 on a 3-turn cooldown. Each critical hit has a 50% chance of decreasing the cooldown of Gore Maker by 1 turn, which is his A3 on a 5-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, will ignore 20% of each target's defense, will ignore a further 5% of defense for each buff on the target. Seems like it's an amazing ability. This guy is insanely overrated, not underrated, overrated. He's properly rated, guys, because the word is out on him. Unfortunately, he just doesn't hit very hard. He's not much of a nuker, right? He has a high base attack, 1564, and it's a shame because so many people were so excited about this guy. He has a really cool War Machine passive as well. He is a slightly above average DPS, you know, comparing him to even epics and all the champions in the game. So he's not useless. But he's not bringing anything to the table other than damage. He's not bringing any debuffs to the table. He has a stun again on the A1, but other than that, there's no decreased defense, nothing like that. So, you know, he's not doing turn meter. He's not doing much, right? So, for a slightly above average damage dealer, you could do a lot better in my opinion. This guy also sucks. And this will conclude, no, there's one more sucky champion, maybe 2 more. Nogdar the Headhunter. He has 12k HP, first of all. 12k HP, is he an uncommon? But that actually comes into play in his passive. So on the A1, he has a heal. On the A2, attacks all enemies. After attacking, he sacrifices HP equal to 50% of his max HP and then places 2 continuous heals. So yeah, he's killing himself on a 4-turn cooldown, cool. And then on a 7-turn cooldown, 5 when booked, sacrifices more HP, 50% of the champion's max HP, then equalizes HP levels with the target enemy. HP levels of both this champion and the target enemy were brought down to the level of the one with the lowest HP. Kind of cool, considering he's sacrificing and then bringing them down to his level. But man, the guy has 12k HP. This is the good news though. Revives this champion with 50% HP and 50% turn meter when killed if all other allies are alive. So thank God he has this, otherwise he'd be so trash. But if he's dying all the time, it's okay if he's the only one dying, right? But does he put out enough damage to justify, you know, this very niche kit, to say the least? A lot of people would argue no, and I would tend to agree. And you know, even the reviews are not very excited, the people who did max him out. Again, I feel like I have to say this every time I mention reviews. You can't read much into them, but, you know, sometimes they give a good little barometer. Iron Brago, on the other hand, is a fantastic fragment summon, I believe. Fragment summon or fusion? Fragment summon, I think. Because I have him. Otherwise, why would I have him, right? He's a really good champion, guys. He's a defensive-based champion. A lot of you, if you have him, congratulations. I'm sure you use him. He's very good in Doom Tower. He's very good everywhere, right? Has an increased defense on all allies for 3 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, which comes into play on his A3. And then attacks 1 enemy. Has a 100% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. Has a 100% chance of placing a stun debuff for 2 turns instead if the target is under 2 or more buffs. Really, really, really solid ability here on his A2. Then on his A3, on a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn, also places a decrease attack and, a decrease attack debuff on all enemies for 2 turns if he's under that increased defense. But he's pretty much always under the increased defense because it's on a 3-turn cooldown and it lasts for 3 turns, right? So solid. We're getting decrease attack and provoke on all enemies on a 3-turn cooldown. That's really, really good. Increases the defense of all allies by 10% of this champion's defense. What a passive! What a support champion, what a defensive-based champion. He's one of the better champions really in the game in terms of support and defensive kind of addition to your team. Allied, it gets better.
You make me want to be a better man.
Allied defense in Doom Tower battles by 34%. Let me know in the comments if you use Iron Brago, if you're on as high on this champion as I am. He's such a great champion, such a great addition to the game. So there we go. We have 1 good, 2 bad, actually 2 really good and 2 really not that good. Okay, so moving on to Demon Spawn. This is where things really get cooking here, guys. Countess Lix. Man, I love this champion. I really like her. She's really good. She puts out a lot of damage. On her A1, she has a weaken. On the A2, attacks all enemies 3 times, already off the gate. You can put her in a stun set. I don't run her in stun, but if you need some help, you know, put her in stun. She's attacking all enemies 3 times. If you have her in that stun, it's an 18% times 3. You know, every single hit has an independent 18% chance of landing that stun. Each hit has a 100% chance of placing a decreased speed. Each hit also has a 100% chance of decreasing the enemy's turn meter by 10%. Really, really, really good crowd control ability here. And then it gets even better. On a 5-turn cooldown, Time Dilation attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing a block active skills for 2 turns. Also decreases the cooldown of all ally skills except this champion by 1 turn. Man, she's a really, really cool champ. I like her a lot. She's a companion champion to Astralon, who we talked about earlier. She has that companion passive, and she also fills this champion's turn meter by 5% each time an ally receives a debuff. So just all in all, one of my favorite additions to the game, and she looks so cool too. I mean, super, super cool looking champion. Really a big fan. Oh, it gets even better. Sicia Flametongue, I love this chick, man. She's, is she my favorite champion on the list?
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
I'm not saying she's the best. I'm just saying I really, really am a big fan of this champion. She hits hard and she's really cool. HP burn for days, right? It has a 3-time hitter on the A1. Throw it in the Giant Slayer Mastery for tier 6 on the offense. Each hit has a 30% chance when booked of increasing the duration of HP burn debuffs on the target by 1 turn. She's all about the burn, man. She's all about the burn. She has an AoE attack on a 3-turn cooldown, has a 100% chance of placing a weakened debuff for 2 turns, also has a 100% chance of placing a decreased defense debuff for 2 turns if there are at least 2 enemies under HP burn debuffs, then instantly activates any HP burn debuffs on each target and decreases the duration of those HP burn debuffs by 1 turn. So essentially, she forces them to have a tick, right? A tick of damage, if you will. And then her A3 places an HP burn debuff on this champion for 3 turns. So she's placing them on herself. You guys know me. If we're doing any funky, weird stuff to ourselves, if champions are damaging themselves or placing poisons or HP burns on themselves, to me, it's an indicator that it might be a really good ability. It might be a really good ability. Sneaky, right? Then attacks all enemies. Has a 100% chance of placing an HP burn debuff on all enemies for 3 turns. On a 4-turn cooldown, but 3 turns. Grants an extra turn if an HP burn debuff is placed on all enemies. I love the grants an extra turn ability. So she can go from a 4-turn immediately down to a 3-turn cooldown because she's cycling all her other abilities. That means even more AoEs on her A2. She's just so cool. And there's more. Metaphysics increases this champion's speed by 3 and damage inflicted by 3% for each ally and enemy under an HP burn debuff. Dude, sick, especially against Spider, right? If Cardiel's on the same team, will also heal all allies by 3% of their max HP from HP burn debuffs instead of receiving damage from them. Pretty cool extra little, tidbit to her passive. Have accuracy in all battles, great aura by 60 as well. Sicia Flametongue, what a great champion. Big, big fan. Can you tell? Undead Horde, guys. Here we go. So where is he? Okay, Urost the Soulcage. So I have him out at first. I'm gonna admit it to you guys. I was a little disappointed in this champion, but then I found out he can solo Scarab King. All you have to do, first of all, he's hard to get, right? He's a Doom Tower hard champion, right? He's the 2nd wave of Doom Tower hard champions. You can see again here. This has kind of echoed my early sentiment of this champion, but you build him for if you're lucky enough to have him, right? Or when you do get him, I'm just gonna keep it short and simple here. You build him slow, aka no speed on him, and you put him in regeneration gear, and you let his passive solo the Scarab King. Okay, attacks all enemies. The poison. On the pass. We'll talk about it in a second. It's an AoE attack, right? Has a chance of decreasing turn meters if they're under 1 or more poison debuffs. Also has decreased speed for 2 or more poison debuffs, and then has a stun if they're under 3 or more poison debuffs. That's on an AoE 3-turn cooldown, okay? On the A3, places a strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns, and an ally protect buff on all allies except this champion for 2 turns. It's a great, support ability on the A3. Again, strengthen, ally protect, I love both of those. It mitigates a lot of damage, right? 25% on the strengthen, and 50% on the ally protect. That's a lot of damage mitigation. And then this passive, right? This is what it's all about. when attacked, has a 75% chance when booked of placing a poison debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. Whenever an ally is attacked while under a strengthened buff, has a 75% chance of placing a provoke, increases the champion's max HP by 5% whenever an enemy receives damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion. So you guys can already see why this is a tremendous passive against Scarab King, right? Whenever an enemy receives damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion, also decreases their max HP by 5%. So again, Scarab King, right? So a very, very specialist champion in my opinion. Just a decent champion, average support champion because of the A3 without the passive. So that is Urost the Soulcage. Necro the Great. I love this dude, but he was added in 2020. Womp womp. All right, no one else is new in this category, or this faction, I should say. Moving on to the Dark Elves. So we only have one new champion here. This, it does feel like Visix the Unbowed is new, but we're not going to count her because she's not technically new. Ruel the Huntmaster. I put a guide out on this champion, and I called him, like, Raul. So many comments were like, dude, didn't know he was Spanish or whatever, you know? I'm like, my bad. Ruel, not Raul. Ash. Ruel the Huntmaster. All right, so it has a decreased defense on his A1. That's actually really helpful. I really like him having that there. On the A2, attacks all enemies, places an extra hit on enemies under Hex debuffs, will ignore 25% of each target's defense. If there are 4 or more enemies under Hex debuffs, 3-turn cooldown. If you missed my guide on this champion, essentially, I like him. I think he's a solid champion. I think they're going to be adding more Hex champions to the game, and I think his value will actually increase when they do that. Has an increased accuracy on all allies, and then places a Hex debuff on all enemies for 2 turns, and then places a Perfect Veil buff on this champion for 2 turns, and fills his champion's turn meter by 50%. Great ability, right? Great ability. His March Quarry, his passive, decreases the speed of enemies under Hex debuffs by 5% and decreases the resistance of those enemies by 10%. Also increases the damage enemies under Hex debuffs receive by 10% and decreases the value of heals they receive by 30%. All in all, I would say a good legendary champion, a good legendary champion. All right, next up is going to be Dwarves. Actually, I take it back. Thea the Tomb Angel. Oh man, I wanted to skip her. I still don't like her, even when paired with Ruel. I would rather just use Ruel separately, Raul separately, right? She only places Hex on her A1, right? On 2 enemies. On her A2, on a 5-turn cooldown, she attacks all enemies. Damage increases by 50% for each Hex debuff on the enemy, stacks up to 300%. Listen, if you have the full 300%, which is so difficult to pull off because she's removing Hex debuffs from all enemies after attacking. Dude, remove this line from this ability. That's a good start to buff her. Just remove this line from this ability, right? Place a Perfect Veil buff on the champion for 3 turns and then grants an extra turn. She also has a pretty good passive. Has a 50% chance of placing a True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn when an enemy loses 30% or more of their max HP in a single hit. So that's good at least, but again, 5-turn cooldown, very conditional. If you have the full 300%, sure, it can deal a lot of damage. Otherwise, not so much. All right, next up, Dwarves. Got a bunch of new dwarves here. This video is like halfway over, and because all the Shadowkins are new, right? Underpriest Brogni. Brogni is a beast. One of the best fusions ever added to the game. If you have him, congratulations. You have your hands on one of the best champions in the game. Has an HP burn on the A1. On the A2, an AoE attack on a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies. Has a 100% chance of removing one random buff from all enemies. 1 random buff sometimes is all you need. Sometimes they only have 1 buff on them, right? So still a valuable start to this ability. Has a 100% chance of removing 1 random debuff from all allies, and then increases the value of shield buffs on all allies by 30% of the damage inflicted. It's an amazing shield boost because he's putting out a decent amount of damage here, and it's almost like Miscreated Monster-esque, right? That's how much extra shield value oftentimes they're getting off of this ability, and then the 1 random debuff, sometimes that's all you need as well, right? Great ability. On the A3, plays a block debuffs buff, and a block buffs buff would suck. That would be the worst thing they ever add to the game, right? Block debuffs and an increased attack on all allies for 2 turns. Then place a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns, equal to 30% of this champion's max HP. The shield buff cannot be removed. Really, really solid. 3-turn cooldown. That seems like unfair, right? And then whenever an ally under a shield buff is attacked, reflects 25% of the damage inflicted on the shield back to the attacker. Also heals that ally with 25% HP. Dude, Really, really sick champion, man. Really has the resist in Doom Tower battles as well. A lot of HP on him as well. He's fast too, 100 speed on this champion. Hurndig, he is the current fusion. Oh, I'm curious. Very good reviews. A very good champion. On his A1, attacks one enemy, grants an extra turn, and decreases the cooldown of the Stasis Strike skill by 2 turns if the attack kills an enemy. Good news is it actually has pretty good multipliers on it. And on the A2, same thing. Good multipliers on a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, has decreased defense and a decreased accuracy for 2 turns. On the A3, this is on a 4-turn cooldown, guys. Attacks one enemy, fully depletes the target's turn meter. Will also attack all enemies if the first attack is critical. This AoE attack has a 100% chance when booked to placing a weaken debuff for 2 turns. Will also place an HP burn debuff for 2 turns after the attack on the enemies whose turn meters are below 30%. He's doing a lot there, a lot of damage as well. On the passive, fills his champion's turn meter by 10% each time they are hit. Occurs once per hit. Also fills his champion's turn meter by 20% whenever an ally dies in the stayed passive. Very, very good champion. Man, some amazing additions to the game with these two. But with this dude, Samar Gemcursed, I have him on my free-to-play, guys. Ugh. Don't remind me. Don't remind me. He's not that good, man. He's not that good. He seems like it could be good when you look at his kit, but he doesn't deal enough damage to justify him being a single target damage dealer. That's it for me, you know? On his A2, he inflicts bonus damage equal to the difference in HP percentage levels between this champion and the target. Inflicts more bonus damage for the number of buffs on this champion and the target. Okay, whatever. Doesn't deal enough damage to be justifiable to build him in even on my free-to-play. I'm not building him, especially on my free-to-play. Building legendaries on a free-to-play is such a huge investment, right? It's such a huge time and resource investment that it's not necessarily worth it all the time. Attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of stealing 2 random buffs before attacking, places an extra hit on enemies that have any buffs left. So I lied. He does have an AoE. My bad on that. I just spaced it out. But still, not dealing enough damage on a 4-turn cooldown. You know, I don't know. His passive is cool, though. Plays a block damage buff on the champion for 1 turn at the start of each round. That's his passive effect. His active effect is blocks incoming damage and places a block damage buff on this champion for 1 turn. When they receive a hit, they would drop their HP below 30%. So really, really cool passives, and he's an HP-based champion. So I feel like if a little buff could go a long way on this champion. He's not trash. His kit is good, except for that he's not dealing enough damage to justify using him or building him, in my opinion. So those are the new dwarfs, guys. Now let's go on to the Shadowkin. We have 6 champions to talk about here, guys. And let's see. I don't like 2 of them. Can you guess? And I really like 3 of them. And one is... No, okay. Shut up, Ash. Just tell us about the champions, man. Jintoro. Jintoro, it turns out, is a real clan boss beast. I run him on my Batman double man-eater team. I actually put him in, believe it or not, replacing Dracomorph. He deals more damage than Dracomorph in the same gear, basically. That's pretty crazy. Against Clan Boss, not anywhere else. Dracomorph is better than champion than him. Let me just say that out loud. But for Clan Boss unkillable teams, over 50 rounds, Jintoro outdamages Draco for me. Attack 1 enemy, grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. Okay. On his A2, this is a hard-hitting ability, Blood Freeze. Very hard-hitting. Attacks 1 enemy, steals 100% of the target's turn meter. Again, not relevant for Clan Boss, but still cool to have. Decreases the cooldown of Oni's Rage by 1 turn if the target is immune to turn meter reduction effects, which is very relevant for a Clan Boss. So it's decreasing the cooldown of his A3. His A3 is already on a 3-turn cooldown, and check this out. Attacks 1 enemy, places decreased defense and a weaken. That's why he can sub in for your debuffer for Dracomorph on my team, because he has both of those debuffs on Clan Boss. Will attack 5 times instead of 1 on every 4th use of this skill against the same target in 1 round. So yeah, that's a lot of damage. This is against Clan Boss on Ultra Nightmare. This is doing about 225,000 damage per hit. So we're going over 1 million damage every 4th time, or every 4th time, excuse me. And again, keep in mind, every time we go with the A2, it's decreasing the cooldown by 1 turn as well for Clan Boss. All turn meter fill effects are increased by 50% when used on this champion as well. Very cool champion, attacking all battles by 29%. I use him only in Clan Boss, but he can be used in anywhere in the game. He's really a good champion. I like him a lot. Lady Kimi, I just pulled. I haven't maxed her out yet, but I can't wait. Expect a guide on her maybe tomorrow. Maybe tonight. Maybe tonight I'll focus on maxing out Lady Kimi. She's so cool. First of all, she looks kind of... her aesthetic kind of grew on me. I was like, what is this? Some kind of silver-plated armor, you know, I don't know, armor or something? I don't know. But it's cool. I like her. I like her weapon, the blue flaming sword. Or is that a sword, guys? Or is it a scythe? Is it a... I think it's a samurai sword. Anyway, shut up, Ash. Get to the champion, dude. Attacks one enemy, then attacks the enemy. Let's just take it slow on Lady Kimi, because she's worth reading. She's really good. First of all, speed. 115, one of the fastest champions in the game. Attacks one enemy, then attacks the enemy with the highest turn meter. Will attack the same enemy twice if the initial target also has the highest turn meter. The second hit has a 60% chance when booked of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15%. So, pretty cool A1. Not game-changing, but pretty cool. On her A2, attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing a decreased accuracy debuff and a decreased speed debuff, both the big versions, obviously, for 2 turns. Also has a 100% chance of decreasing each target's turn meter by 15%. So we're getting turn meter decreasing? Decreasing? Okay. Decreased speed and decreased accuracy with the AoE attack, okay? Solid. She doesn't deal a ton of damage, you know, low basic. She's not an attack champion, she's a support champion. But then check out this, guys. On a 4-turn cooldown, Spirit Flux. An ability with the name Spirit Flux, already, you're like, it better be good, right? Removes 1 random buff from each enemy, then has a 100% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns on enemies who have buffs removed. Really good, especially for Doom Tower, where they always have buffs, it seems like, right? Also fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%, and places an increased accuracy and increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. So we have remove a buff from enemies, right? We have block buffs on enemies. We have turn meter fill on allies. We have increased accuracy, increased speed. This is on a 4-turn cooldown. And then we have the decreased accuracy, decreased speed, the turn meter here on the A2, turn meter here on the A1, and then the passive. Whenever this champion places a debuff on an enemy, and she has 3, again, 2 here and 1 here, decreases that enemy's turn meter by 5% for each debuff placed. So we're getting a 10% decreased turn meter on this A2 per enemy. Also, whenever this champion or an ally receives a debuff, it fills their turn meter by 5% for each debuff received. Really, really solid champion. I love her. Speed in Doom Tower battles by 30%. What do you guys think of Lady Kimi? I think she's amazing. Yoshi the Drunkard. I think he's a cool champion. Maybe an underrated champion. I think people are kind of divided. I'm on the side of the fence that actually likes Yoshi a lot. Has a stun on the A1. On the A2, he has a 2-turn cooldown, decreased accuracy, an HP burn, excuse me. On the A3, has an increased attack, increased accuracy on all allies for 2 turns. And then, this is really cool, has a 75% chance of placing a True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn. Has a 75 or 100% chance when booked instead on enemies under increased attack buffs. Really cool ability for the arena. He's a niche champion. I personally don't use him outside the arena. I rarely even use him in the arena, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. But I think a lot of people could use him in the arena, right? For that A3. And then fills the champion's turn meter by 4% each time an enemy receives a buff. And then has speed in all battles by 19%, which is a great aura. Noble kind of sucks, I think. This is the sucky champion I was talking about, guys. This is a brand new champion. Let's see. Ooh. I kind of agree, right? He has synergy with Fear and True Fear. You guys can go ahead and read the A1 if you want to. On the A2, attacks 1 enemy. So it's a single target, you know, ability, but it's on a 2-turn cooldown, okay? We'll ignore 30% of the target's defense. Fills the champion's turn meter by 25% after the attack. If the target is under Fear or True Fear, decreases the cooldown of Dismay by 1 turn. Dismay is his A3. It's on a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of decreasing each enemy's turn meter by 20%. If there are any enemies under Fear or True Fear debuffs, will also fill this champion's turn meter by the amount those enemies lose. So him, like Genzin, the next champion we talk about, they're both on paper seem like they could be really good with all this increase their own turn meter, but I don't find their damage output to be enough to justify, you know, I guess building them, right? They both don't do a ton of damage, and that's all there is to it. So Desolation, the passive, whenever this enemy's turn meter is fully depleted by any champion, has a 75% chance of placing a True Fear debuff on that enemy for 1 turn. All right, maybe in the arena or something? I don't know. But the problem is, and again, you can open up with Dismay, decrease their turn meter. They're not going to be under Fear or True Fear, though. I guess if you maybe set up with Yoshi, set up with Yoshi, have him go first. We get increased attack, increased accuracy on our team. Then we go in, place a True Fear. Then he comes in with his A3, an AoE attack, or then your debuffer goes, I guess. Then he goes with his A3. But it's a lot. It's a big setup. It's a big setup. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to stick that square peg into the round hole, guys. You let me know if you're as down on that champion as I am. He's not trash. I'm not trying to say he's like a super trash champion, but I'm just not that excited about him. I think that, you know, Lady Kimi is so much better out of the same, you know, champion batch. Genzin. Genzin is, I think, a little bit better than Noble, but not a ton. At least, see, he has each hit fills his champion's turn meter by 6%. On his A1, at least he has decreased defense, right? So he's dealing a moderate amount of damage. He's not a hardcore nuker. He's more like a debuffer. So picture like Stag Knight type damage on this champion, right? Each critical hit fills his champion's turn meter by 10%. On the A3, 3-turn cooldown, attacks one enemy, will ignore unkillable and shield buffs, fills his champion turn meter by 30%. Instead, will fill by 60% if the target has less than 50% HP after the attack. Will also decrease the cooldown of Steel Parting, the A2, and Fated Vengeance, the A3, by 1 turn if the attack kills an enemy. Again, it's only a single target ability, but it's cool that it does, you know, ignore unkillable and shield. Good in niche situations in the arena. I've tried him in dungeons. I have him built out. I've tried him a lot, trying to, you know how it is when you get a new champion. You're like, okay. Let's see where I can use this dude. He's gonna be good. He's gonna be good. And then he's just not. It's weird. Like even for Stag Knight, you know, replacement. Stag Knight at least brings the decreased attack to the table, decreased speed on his A1. You know, it's not a great comparison, but Stag Knight's faster at 107 versus 100, and this guy doesn't put out that much extra damage. You'd think he would when you read his kit, but it didn't work out for me, you know? So he's not a trash champion. Just not as good as I was hoping for, I guess, right? So increase the champion's speed by 10 and resistance by 50 if there are fewer champions on the champion's team than the number of enemies on the enemy team. So good for like Spider, I guess, right? All right, now Riho Bonespear. What a way to end the video, guys, because she is insane. Insane. She's right up there with Cardiel, with, God, this has been a long video, huh, guys? with Ramantu, with I don't know, I'm not with Brogni. Like I think she's on that level, right? On that level, she's very, very good. Attacks one enemy. She should be. Again, she's what Yakarl should be, a void legendary who's actually really, really good. Whoever pulls her, I don't have her, but if you do, you have a real game changer on your hands, in my opinion. Places a continuous heal buff on the ally with lowest HP for 1 turn. Also places a 7.5 continuous heal buff on all allies with 30% HP or less for 1 turn. This is our A1. On the A2, look at this ability. On a 3-turn cooldown, single target, but here we go. A stun, placing a stun, so it's not predicated on the attack being critical. Places a HP burn, places a decreased defense, places a weaken, places a decreased attack, places a decreased crit rate, and then attacks the target. Wow. Every debuff you could hope for there on one ability. Great for bosses, obviously, it's single target. On the A3, perfect bod, E. Removes all debuffs. It's not a 3-turn cooldown, guys, a full cleanse. Removes all debuffs from all allies, and then places block debuffs for 2 turns. Really good. Also, heals all allies by 35% of their max HP and a further 5% for each debuff removed from them. Perfect Body is an insane support ability, guys. Really, really good. The cleanse with the block debuffs on a 3-turn for 2 turns on the block debuffs. That's really, really good. When receiving any debuffs, instantly transfers them from this champion to the attacker in Reflect. That happens once every 3 turns, and that's a passive. She has ally attack and faction crits by 42%. For Shadowkin faction, when it's released, it might already be in the game by the time you guys are watching this. That's going to be very, very helpful as well to deal out a lot of damage and go a little bit faster. And 42% is not a joke, right? That's a lot of attack. So I think people are going to be leaning on this. If you have her, a lot of people will probably be leaning on her as their Aura lead as well. So guys, there we have it. Those are all the new legendaries. I hope I didn't forget anybody. Those are all, I think, 24, 24 new legendaries added in 2021. Who is your favorite out of all these legendaries? And who was I wrong on? Who was I too low on? Or who was I too high on? Let me know in the comments below, guys. Thank you for watching all the way till the end. I appreciate you. And as always, take care, guys.